December 2nd, 1805. A frozen morning in Moravia. The fate of Europe hangs in the balance. Three emperors watch as their armies prepare for slaughter. At the center of it all, one man, a military genius whose name will echo through history, Napoleon Bonaparte. This is the story of the Battle of Austerlitz, the day the French Empire struck its most devastating blow. But before the bloodshed, before the glory, there was the march. The year is 1805. Napoleon, now Emperor of the French, stands at the height of his power, but Europe refuses to bow. Britain, Austria, and Russia have formed the Third Coalition, determined to crush him. The Austrian army, led by Emperor Francis II, and the Russians, commanded by the bold but reckless General Kutuzov, move to confront him. Napoleon, ever the strategist, does not wait for them. He lures them into a trap. In a daring maneuver, Napoleon abandons his coastal defenses and marches his Grande Armée, 200,000 strong, eastward at breakneck speed. This is no ordinary army. These are hardened veterans, men who have fought in Italy and Egypt, who would follow their emperor into hell itself. They cover 20 miles a day, an astonishing feat for the time. By late November, they stand at the gates of Vienna, but the real battle lies ahead. The Allies, confident in their numbers, believe Napoleon is overextended. They do not yet realize he wants them to think that. He allows his army to appear weak, retreating from strong positions, baiting the enemy forward. The Russian and Austrian high command takes the bait. They see victory within reach. Little do they know, every step they take is one step closer to disaster. December 1st, the eve of battle. The men are tired, hungry, but their spirits are high. The emperor has promised them glory. Tomorrow they will fight not just for France, but for immortality. Dawn approaches. The stage is set, the players are ready, and history is about to be written in blood. December 2nd, 1805. The first light of dawn creeps across the fields of Austerlitz. The ground is hard with frost, the air thick with anticipation. Two armies, over 150,000 men, stand on the brink of carnage. Napoleon, wrapped in his gray greatcoat, surveys the land. He has chosen this battlefield. He has dictated every move. Now he waits for the trap to snap shut. The Allied forces, Austrian and Russian, outnumber him, but numbers mean nothing to a man who fights with cunning. The Allies, led by Tsar Alexander I and Emperor Francis II, believe they have him cornered. Their plan is simple: crush the French right flank, cut off Napoleon's retreat, and end his empire in a single decisive blow. But Napoleon has other ideas. As the sun climbs, the fog begins to lift. The French right flank, the bait, appears vulnerable. Stretched thin, the Allies take it. Thousands of Russian and Austrian troops surge forward, eager to deliver the killing stroke. But behind the lines, Napoleon watches and smiles. What the Allies do not see is Marshal Davout's Third Corps, hidden in the fog, bracing for the assault. What they do not realize is that Napoleon has deliberately weakened his right to lure them in, and what they cannot know is that the real blow is about to fall elsewhere. At precisely 9 a.m., as the Allied forces commit to their attack, Napoleon strikes. The Grande Armée's center, held back until this moment, advances like a hammer. The fog, once an obstacle, now becomes his ally, masking his true strength until it is too late for the enemy to react. The Pratzen Heights, the heart of the Allied position, is stormed by Marshal Soult's infantry. The Russians fight desperately, but the French assault is relentless. By noon, the heights are lost. The Allied army is split in two. Panic sets in. This is no longer a battle. It is a massacre. The Allied left flank collapses. Thousands flee across frozen ponds, only for Napoleon's artillery to shatter the ice beneath them. Men drown in the freezing water, their cries lost in the thunder of cannon. By 4 p.m., it is over. The Allies are shattered. The French have lost fewer than 9,000 men. The Russians and Austrians? Over 27,000 dead, wounded, or captured. Napoleon rides across the field, his soldiers cheering. He has done it. He has won the greatest victory of his career. This is the price of glory. The Battle of Austerlitz is over, but its echoes will shape Europe for a decade to come. Napoleon, at the peak of his power, now stands unchallenged. The sun of Austerlitz has risen, and with it, an empire. December 3rd, 1805. The field of Austerlitz is silent. The guns have cooled. The groans of the wounded have faded into the winter wind. Napoleon has won his masterpiece, but victory is not just measured in corpses left behind. It is measured in the shock waves that ripple fall outward, in the thrones that tremble, in the maps that must now be redrawn. This is the reckoning. Within 48 hours of the battle, Emperor Francis II of Austria requests an armistice. The negotiations are not negotiations at all. They are a surrender. The Treaty of Pressburg will soon dismantle the 1,000-year-old Holy Roman Empire. Austria loses nearly 40,000 square miles of territory, 4 million subjects, an empire reduced to a vassal. For the Russians, the humiliation is unbearable. Tsar Alexander's army limps homeward, their pride shattered, the myth of Russian invincibility broken by a Corsican artillery officer. As for the Austrians, their defeat is so total that diplomats whisper of removing the Habsburgs from power entirely. Vienna will never forget this winner. But in Paris, there is only euphoria. When news of the victory arrives, the city erupts. Bells ring for 3 days straight, yet behind the celebrations, the shrewdest minds already see the danger. Talleyrand, Napoleon's own foreign minister, writes privately, "We have made peace too harsh to last." In London, Prime Minister William Pitt receives the news with grim resignation. Staring at his map, he murmurs, "Roll up that map of Europe. It will not be needed these 10 years. Within months, he will be dead." Some say, of a broken heart, Britain now stands alone against the French colossus. And what of the victor? Napoleon, ever restless, already turns his gaze north. Prussia, foolish, proud Prussia, who hesitated to join the coalition, will soon regret its indecision. The drums of war are not stilled. They merely await a new beat. On the battlefield, Napoleon told his men, "You have covered yourselves in eternal glory, but glory has a price. The seeds sown at Austerlitz will grow into the bloodiest harvest Europe has ever seen. Leipzig, Borodino, Waterloo, all roads lead from this frozen field." 1806. The French Empire stands unchallenged. Austerlitz has made Napoleon master of Europe, but masters, as history teaches us, often become prisoners of their own power. The victory was too complete, the peace too punishing. And now, the reckoning begins. Prussia, which had hesitated to join the Third Coalition, now foolishly challenges the victor of Austerlitz. Their army, once the terror of Europe, has not fought a major war in a decade. Their generals still study Frederick the Great's tactics from the 7 Years' War. Napoleon looks at their bravado and sees only prey. The Prussians learn their mistake in a single catastrophic day. At Jena and Auerstedt, Napoleon's veterans annihilate what was once Europe's finest army. In 24 hours, Prussia loses 25,000 men. Within 2 weeks, French troops march through Berlin's Brandenburg Gate. The humiliation is absolute. It is here, in victory after victory, that the first cracks appear. The continental system, Napoleon's attempt to strangle Britain through economic blockade, turns allies into resentful subjects. The Spanish ulcer begins to fester. Russia, though temporarily cowed, is regrouping. Austerlitz's brilliance has created an empire, but can even Napoleon hold it together? By 1809, Austria dares to rise again. At Wagram, Napoleon wins another crushing victory, but the cost is higher. The French army is no longer the invincible force of 1805. Its ranks now include raw conscripts from across the empire. The veterans of Austerlitz are growing scarce. The law of empires is simple. They expand until they can no longer defend themselves. Napoleon's brilliance delays this truth, but cannot erase it. With each new conquest, the resentment grows. With each new victory, the next war becomes inevitable. In his quieter moments, does he remember Austerlitz? That perfect victory? That morning when the sun itself seemed to obey his command? Does he understand that was the peak? That every campaign since has been an attempt to recapture that moment? 1812, 7 years since Austerlitz. 7 years of victories that felt like defeats. The French Empire now stretches from Lisbon to Moscow, but its foundations are crumbling. The perfect battle, that masterpiece of deception and destruction, has become a curse. For how does one top perfection? The answer, it seems, is to keep conquering until there is nothing left to conquer. The road to Moscow is paved with the ghosts of Austerlitz. The veterans who marched triumphantly across the Pratzen Heights now stagger through Russian blizzards. The supply lines are stretched beyond breaking. The enemy refuses to stand and fight as they should. This is not war as Napoleon understands it. This is something far worse. An omen. The men whisper of Austerlitz as if it were a legend. Back then, they were invincible. Back then, the sun itself seemed to fight for France. Now, the sun has abandoned them. The cold takes what the Russians do not. 500,000 men marched into Russia. Perhaps 20,000 will return. The disaster is unimaginable. unimaginable, and yet it was inevitable. Austerlitz taught Europe to fear Napoleon, but it also taught them how to defeat him, refuse to play his game, retreat, burn the earth. Wait, the dominoes begin to fall. Prussia rises again. Austria joins the coalition. Even Bavaria, once a loyal ally, turns against him. The empire that was built in a day at Austerlitz is unraveling just as quickly. At Leipzig, Napoleon faces the consequences of his own brilliance. The tactics that won at Austerlitz, the feints, the encirclements, are now used against him. His marshals, once invincible, are outmaneuvered. His young conscripts, no match for the hardened veterans of 1805, break and run. The defeat is catastrophic. The end has come. And so, the man who once dictated terms to emperors is reduced to ruling a tiny island. The sun of Austerlitz has set, but the shadow it cast, that remains. Europe will never forget what he was capable of, and neither will he. February 26, 1815. The man who once ruled Europe now rules nothing but his thoughts. The Bourbons sit upon his throne. The kings he humiliated now mock his exile. But history is not done with Napoleon Bonaparte, for in his mind, one truth remains. Austerlitz was not a fluke. It was destiny, and destiny deserves a second act. With 1,000 men and 4 cannon, Napoleon does the impossible. He escapes. The gamble is outrageous. Suicide. But this is the same man who tricked 3 emperors into disaster at Austerlitz, who broke Prussia in a day, who marched on Moscow because no one dared to stop him. Europe has underestimated him before. They are about to do so again. The news spreads like wildfire. The eagle has landed. The Bourbon troops sent to arrest him join him instead. Regiment after regiment flings aside the white cockade of the monarchy for the tricolor. Within weeks, Napoleon marches into Paris without firing a shot. The impossible has happened. The sun of Austerlitz rises once more, but time is the one enemy even Napoleon cannot outmaneuver. The veterans of Austerlitz are gone. The new army is green, untested. The marshals, once fearless, now hesitate, and Europe has learned. This time, they will not fight him separately. This time, they come together. Britain, Prussia, the Netherlands, all united to finish what Austerlitz began. The stage is set. The players take their positions. Wellington, Blücher, and Napoleon. Older, sicker, but still Napoleon. He has one last masterstroke planned. A crushing blow to the British center, just like at Austerlitz. But this time, the trap will not spring shut. For hours, it works. The British lines bend. Wellington's face is grim. Victory seems within Napoleon's grasp until the unthinkable. Prussian drums on the horizon. Blücher has arrived. The flank that was supposed to be secure isn't. The mistake Napoleon would never have made at Austerlitz proves fatal at Waterloo. It is over. The last army of France is routed. The last gamble lost. As Napoleon rides from the field, he passes a group of wounded grenadiers. One, bleeding from his chest, manages to salute. The emperor returns it, his hand trembling. Some say he weeps. Austerlitz was the peak. Everything after, Spain, Russia, Leipzig, Waterloo, was the long, terrible descent. Napoleon's tragedy was not that he fell. It was that he had once flown so high. 2 centuries have passed. The cannons are silent now. The blood has soaked into the earth. But stand here on a winter morning, when the fog clings to the Pratzen Heights, and you can almost hear them. The shouts of charging infantry, the thunder of hooves, the dying screams swallowed by the wind. Austerlitz was more than a battle. It was the moment the modern world was born. Napoleon is gone, but his shadow stretches across time. The Holy Roman Empire, swept away by his victories, the map of Europe, redrawn by his ambition, the ideals of revolution, of merit over birthright, they outlived him. Austerlitz didn't just defeat armies, it shattered an old world order. Today, military academies still teach Austerlitz as the perfect battle. The feigned retreat, the hidden reserves, the timing so precise it feels like choreography. But there's another lesson, one harder to learn, that no victory, no matter how brilliant, can outlast its consequences. The men who fought here couldn't know they were unleashing 20 years of war, that their triumph would lead millions to graves from Madrid to Moscow. This is the paradox of Austerlitz, a masterpiece that doomed its creator. Perhaps Austerlitz's true legacy lies in what came after: the Congress of Vienna, the balance of power, the first fragile attempts to build a Europe where nations talk rather than march to war. It took oceans of blood to reach this point, and it began on this frozen field. We study Austerlitz not just to understand Napoleon, but ourselves. The seduction of genius genius, the price of glory, the terrible truth that sometimes the greatest victories plant the seeds of eventual ruin. The past never truly dies. It waits in the soil, in the stones, in the choices we make today. If you've journeyed with us through this saga, consider subscribing to The Past Unfolded for more stories where history's echoes meet the present.